I never imagined a single careless sentence could freeze my heart like that. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting long golden streaks across the hardwood floor. I was drying the lunch dishes when my mother's voice rang out from the living room. High, sharp, and sweet, in that artificial tone she reserved for people she wanted to impress. Scarlett? Oh, don't worry about her. She's just the help around here. I froze. My hand clenched the dish towel until my knuckles turned white. I turned, leaning against the counter, heart pounding in my chest. Every word she'd said hit me like ice water to the face, burning, numbing, and inescapable. Scarlett Winslow, 23, eldest of 4 sisters, was called the help by the very woman I'd spent my youth keeping a home together for. We need to focus on Brooke's ballet recital. This could be her big break, my mother continued, her voice now light as air. But to me, it weighed a ton. Brooke. My youngest sister, 11. While I worked at the bookstore by day and delivered food at night to help cover the electric bill, Brooke studied ballet at a private academy, wore pointe shoes imported from Italy, and had a tutor come to the house every afternoon. I'd never been jealous, only hurt. I remembered the girl I used to be, the one who clung to the piano every night with passion until the day Mom pulled me aside and said, "You're the oldest, Scarlett. You understand, right? We can't afford 2 sets of lessons. Let Brooke have them." I was 13 that day. I nodded. No tears, no protest. I always understood. Too much. Upstairs, I heard Brooke's heavy footfalls as she practiced, the classical music drifting down like a cruel reminder that my dream had once lived and had been taken. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Tried not to cry. Tried not to scream, "I'm your daughter, not your maid." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Madison, my 17-year-old sister. "Hey, are you making dinner tonight? I'm starving." I glanced at the screen and let out a bitter laugh. Mom's baby had food delivered to her, while I stayed in the kitchen, unpaid, unthanked. In the living room, Mom continued her lively call. "Brooke's costume cost a fortune, but Frank said it's worth every penny. She just shines up there. She was born to stand out." I set the towel down. My eyes drifted toward the cupboard corner where I'd hidden my college applications. The acceptance letter from Washington State University lay at the bottom. I'd received it 2 days ago. Mom didn't know. No one did. No one ever bothered to ask. I pulled out my phone and scrolled down to a name I'd never dared touch. Edith Bennett. My grandmother. The one Mom had cut off years ago. I'd gotten her number from Aunt Sylvia during a family funeral 3 years back. My fingers trembled as I typed. "This is Scarlett. I don't know if you remember me, but I need someone to talk to, someone who will actually listen." Right after I hit send, the oven timer beeped. I pulled the casserole out just as the key turned in the front door. Dad was home. Mom would step out now, all smiles, and I'd have to serve dinner like a proper maid. I sighed. For the first time in years, something unfamiliar stirred inside me. Not bitterness, not despair. The desire to live for myself. That first message to Grandma Edith was just a few lines. I didn't expect much. Deep down, maybe I just needed someone to see that I existed. That evening, while the family crowded around Brooke, admiring her new ivory dress with crystal details, my phone buzzed quietly. "Scarlett," I remember. "Meet me? Saturday, 9 a.m., Corner Cafe at King and Maple. Don't tell your mother." I clutched my phone, silent among the flurry of compliments and praise. Mom's voice still rang through the room. "Brooke is simply brilliant. The other moms are green with envy." I said nothing, just lowered my head and let a small, private smile rise to my lips. A door, no matter how small, had opened. That Saturday morning, Seattle was wrapped in a thin layer of mist, as if the whole city had been caught between dreaming and waking. I put on my old denim jacket and tied my hair high, not to look good, but to feel strong. When I stepped into the cafe on the corner of King and Maple, I saw her instantly. Edith Bennett, sitting tall in a booth, hands wrapped around a tilted cappuccino. Her gray hair was pinned up neatly, navy sweater hugging her frame. She stood when she saw me, her eyes uncertain but warm. "Scarlett?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't know where to start." "Then let me," she replied, patting the seat beside her. "With a question. Did you get the scholarship?" My eyes widened. "You knew?" "I have a friend in the admissions office at Evergreen," she smiled, stirring her drink. "After your message?" I asked. They were very impressed. I laughed, part disbelief, part emotion. "I haven't told anyone. Mom would flip out." "Not if." "When," she corrected. "Because you're going, Scarlett, not to run away, but because you've earned it." Stayed silent. She opened her bag and pulled out a thick envelope, sliding it across the table. "This is for you." I froze as I pulled out a bank statement, my name clearly printed in the corner, along with the note, "Trust Fund, established June 2nd, 2001, creator, Edith Bennett." The number made my vision blur. Enough for 4 years of college, a used car, an apartment near campus, and to live without working myself to exhaustion every night. "I opened that when you were born," she said. "I knew your mother would never let you be free." "She did the same to me." I looked up. "You were blocked by your mother too?" "Not just blocked," she said sadly. "She burned my scholarship papers in front of me. I never got out of the shadows." I clenched my hands. "I don't want to be a shadow anymore." "Then don't wait another minute," she said gently. "Use everything you have, even the pain, to build your own path." My phone buzzed again. Madison. "Brooke is screaming for you. Mom said if you're not back before the fitting, she's cutting her ballet funding. Please, don't let her suffer." I showed Grandma the screen. She read it, then sighed. "Same old tactic," she muttered, "using one child to chain the other." I stood, heart aching, torn between rushing back and running away. "I can't let Brooke lose her chance. She's just a kid." "Scarlett." Her tone turned firm. "This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. They'll always make you feel guilty. The real question is, do you want to live a life of gratitude or one of being used?" Still sharp, I didn't answer. I held the envelope tightly in my hand. On the way home, my mind was tangled like a ball of yarn, but amid the chaos, one thought quietly slipped into my heart. Maybe, for the first time in my life, I had a choice. I hadn't had time to tell anyone about my meeting with Grandma Edith before everything exploded in a way I never expected. On Monday morning, I had just gotten back from my early shift at the coffee shop when I saw Nora's cream-colored backpack, my 15-year-old sister, neatly placed by the door. Before I could ask, she stepped out of the kitchen, holding a small notebook, her gaze sharper than usual. "How long were you planning to keep the scholarship a secret from us?" she asked, not accusing, but not gently either. I froze. "You were spying on me?" "Not spying, observing," Nora said as she flipped her notebook open. "You left the acceptance letter in the drawer between your pencils and paper clips. I saw it the night you worked late. And the envelope Grandma gave you? You hid it under the laundry basket." I sighed and sank onto the couch. "Nora, this isn't simple." "Simple or not, you still have to decide. You're going, right?" I nodded. "I can't keep living like this." She pressed her lips into a line. "Good, because I'm tired too." That evening, Mom found the scholarship confirmation in the trash. I had shredded a copy and tried to get rid of it, but as usual, nothing in this house went unnoticed. Her voice rang down the hallway like a fire alarm. "Scarlett Winslow! Down here! Now!" I walked downstairs, my steps steady, not a trace of fear. Dad stood leaning against the armchair, arms crossed. Mom slammed the crumpled paper onto the table. "What is this, a scholarship? College? Who gave you permission?" I said nothing. I placed my phone on the table and hit play on the recording I'd saved. The one where she'd said I was just the help in our house. Her voice rang through the silent living room, clear and sharp like a blade. Mom's face went pale. Dad's brows furrowed, his stare stormy. "You recorded me?" she gasped. "I didn't need to," I said, my voice strangely calm. "That sentence has been carved into my memory since the moment you said it." "You're selfish," Dad growled. "This family raised you, and this is how you repay us?" "Raised me?" I scoffed, the restraint in me finally breaking. "I cooked, cleaned, and took care of my sisters since I was 12. You called it big sister duty. But not once did you ask if I was tired, if I wanted a life of my own." A soft sound behind me made me turn. Nora appeared, followed by Madison, our quiet sister, holding Brooke's hand. "Scarlett's right," Nora said. "She didn't abandon anyone. But if someone's been abandoned, it's her. By our own parents." Mom turned to Nora. "You don't get to speak in grown-up matters." "I'm 15. Nora cut her off, eyes blazing. "I'm old enough to know what unfair looks like." "And what about little Brooke?" Mom shouted, whirling toward me. "Who's going to take her to rehearsal? Who'll make her breakfast? Who?" "You will," I said. "You gave birth to her, not me." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "If you walk out that door, Scarlett, don't expect to come back." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not walking out to run away. I'm leaving to live, for real." I turned and pulled the small suitcase I had packed the night before. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, Brooke ran to me, tears streaming. "Scarlett, don't go. You promised to help me with my dancing." I knelt and hugged her. "When you truly need me, not because Mom says so, but because you want, I'll be there. But right now, I have to go." I opened the door and stepped into the cool spring night in Seattle. The wind swept through my hair, carrying with it dreams I had long buried. The streetlights stretched my shadow across the sidewalk. Not the shadow of a silent housemaid, but of someone finally walking toward her own life. And for the first time ever, I wasn't afraid. 3 months after I left the house in suburban Renton, I was living in a tiny apartment near Evergreen University's campus. It barely fit a single bed, a cheap wooden desk, and a mini electric stove. But I felt richer than I'd ever been. Not because of money, but because, for the first time, I was truly myself. In the mornings, I took classes in human resources and theater arts. In the afternoons, I worked part-time at the campus library. At night, I volunteered teaching music theory to kids at a community center near Pike Street. There, I could play piano again, not to impress anyone, but to remember who I was. I stayed in touch with Madison and Nora by phone. They often called late at night when the house was quiet. Each time, Nora would tell me what Mom had said about me, then snicker. "She's so mad she called you the storm that shattered her family dream." I laughed, but deep inside it still stung. One October night, while I was shelving books at the library, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Scarlett, it's me, Brooke. Don't tell Mom, but I need you." I froze in the aisle. 6 words I'd longed to hear for years. Another message followed right away. "I can't get the middle part right. When you taught me, I could feel the music. Now it's just sound. How do I play from the heart again?" It took me nearly 10 minutes to respond. "Your notes are correct. But music needs emotion. You need to know why you're playing, not for Mom, but for yourself." That night, she texted again. "The piano recital's coming up. I don't want you there to help Mom orchestrate it. I want you there to see me, really see me." The recital took place on a chilly Sunday afternoon. I arrived late, on purpose. I didn't want to draw attention, but the moment I stepped into the Harrington Music Hall, I knew I couldn't stay hidden. Grandma Edith was already seated in the front row. She turned to me and asked gently, "Are you ready?" I nodded, unsure what I was ready for. On stage, Brooke sat at the grand piano, dressed in a navy blue gown, hair tied in a perfect bun. She looked flawless. Unreal. Her fingers danced across the keys with incredible speed, but I saw it immediately. The notes fell like polished stones. No feeling. No soul. And then she stopped. Mid-performance, under the lights, amid the murmur of the audience. Rook bowed her head, then looked straight at me, like she had always known I would be there. "I'm sorry." Her voice trembled, but it was clear. "I can't keep playing music that has no soul." The auditorium fell silent. My mother stood up from behind the curtain, her face flushed red. She rushed out, about to pull Brooke off the bench. I stepped onto the stage before things could go too far. Brooke is doing the bravest thing in her life, choosing to speak her truth. "Scarlett Winslow," my mother nearly roared, "you have no right to interfere." "I'm not interfering," I said, scanning the room. "I was the first one who taught Brooke how to feel the music, back when she couldn't even reach the keys. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to witness her finding herself again." My mother staggered back. She hadn't expected me to stand here, in front of everyone, with my head held high. Brooke looked at me, eyes shimmering with tears. "Do you think I can start over?" I nodded. "Real music doesn't start with your fingers. It starts with your heart, and your heart is still there." The entire auditorium burst into applause, not for technical perfection, but for courage. And in that moment I knew my place was no longer the help in the family, but the one who lit the fire for those still learning how to shine. After the interrupted performance, the auditorium seemed to hold its breath. My mother stood at the wing, her face twisted between rage and confusion. Brooke still sat at the piano, her hands hovering over the keys like she wasn't sure whether to finish or flee. Then, a well-dressed man in a gray suit stepped onto the stage from the audience. The name tag on his blazer read, "Dr. Charles Linwood, Juilliard Conservatory of Music." Whispers spread like ripples. I clearly heard someone behind me say, "He's from the Juilliard Admissions Board." My mother rushed out from backstage, her face shifting from fury to flattery in seconds. "Dr. Linwood, we had no idea you'd be attending. Brooke is truly honored." Dr. Linwood raised a hand, signaling her to stop. "I didn't come to judge a child trained like a machine. I came because I heard there was a sister who once taught her how to play with emotion, and I believe I just saw her." His eyes looked straight at me. Not my mother, not Brooke, me. I took a step back, breath caught in my chest. "Scarlett Winslow," he said, "would you spare a few minutes after the program?"
My mother froze like stone. I had never seen her ignored, especially not by someone in authority. But Scarlett isn't a professional teacher," she stammered. "I'm not looking for certified teachers," he replied. "I'm looking for people who inspire." And tonight, this audience witnessed a piece that was unfinished but more genuine than any flawless performance I've heard. The air erupted. Grandma Edith smiled from the front row, pride radiating from her face. I heard murmurs behind me, someone saying my name, another whispering, "She's the one who taught Brooke to play with real feeling." I stepped off the stage, heart pounding like a drum. Brooke remained on the bench, her eyes shining. I squeezed her hand gently. "That was the best piece you've ever played, you know that, right?" She nodded, tears rolling, not from fear, but from finally being seen. After the recital, I waited in the back hallway. Dr. Linwood approached me with a business card and an offer. "We're expanding our outreach program in local music schools. I'd like to invite you to teach a few emotional interpretation workshops. You have a rare style. We need that." I held the card, stunned like I was dreaming. My mother rushed toward me, footsteps urgent, but another voice cut in, firm and sharp. "No need to hurry, Marlene. Scarlett is no longer under your control." I turned. It was Grandma Edith, face stern, a thick folder in her hand. "I'd also like to announce," she continued, "that the board of Harrington Academy has unanimously voted Scarlett Winslow into the student representative seat on the executive committee. I nominated her. They agreed. No one said a word. My mother stumbled a step back, eyes wide with disbelief. That's impossible. She doesn't even have a teaching degree. I have emotion, I said, and I have lived experience. Maybe that's what you've never understood. Brooke ran into my arms. In her embrace, I was more than a sister. I was someone who sparked hope amid music, once suffocated by pressure. I didn't win by fighting. I won because I no longer needed permission to live authentically. And for the first time in years, I realized real freedom wasn't about leaving your family. It was about returning stronger, unafraid, and unwilling to let anyone dim your light again. 3 days after the recital, I received an email from Harrington Academy confirming my appointment as community arts advisor with an invitation to teach in the upcoming term. I was sitting in my small apartment near campus, windows cracked to let in the Seattle breeze, when my phone rang. It was Madison. Scarlett's month losing it. I tightened my grip on my coffee mug. Why now? Because of Brooke. She turned down the Juilliard fast track scholarship. And she did it right in front of Mom. During the school meeting, I shot to my feet. She what? Exactly what you heard, Madison whispered. She said, I don't want to become a copy of someone else's dream. Mom nearly fainted. I sat back down, heart swelling with a strange but familiar feeling, pride so deep it almost hurt. That afternoon, I returned to the house I had once walked away from without looking back. But this time, I came not as the obedient daughter, but as a woman who had found her voice and was helping her sister find hers. Brooke sat on the front porch steps, ballet shoes tossed aside, hair in a mess. When she saw me, she ran and hugged me tight, saying nothing. Mom stood behind the glass door, face cold and still like a bronze statue. She didn't come out, didn't welcome me in, but didn't stop me either. You sure? I asked, looking into the brown eyes that once trembled under stage lights. Brooke nodded. For the first time in my life, music doesn't feel like chains. I want to study composition, write my own melodies. Juilliard won't back down easily, I warned. You can choose. I know, she smiled, but this time, I'm not choosing easy. That evening was the first time my family had dinner together without anyone bringing up grades, reputation, or rankings. Dad sat at the head of the table, quietly pouring water for each of us. He was still a man of few words, but something in his eyes had changed. He was no longer just standing behind Mom, but trying to understand his children. Kids, he said softly, I'm not good at apologizing. But I let your mother turn this family into a competition, and I don't want to keep living that way. Madison looked up, surprised. Nora spoke. So, how are we going to live now? Dad looked at me. I knew in that moment he was handing over the right to lead. To me, to Scarlett, once considered the outsider in her own home. We're going to live by not repeating our parents' mistakes, I answered. By letting each person breathe and choose. A sudden knock on the door broke the calm. It was Mom. She stood there, coat still on, appearance tidy as always, but her eyes were shaken. Scarlett, she said, are you teaching your sisters to go against me? And I stepped out onto the porch, keeping just enough distance. No, I'm not teaching them to go against anyone. I'm showing them how to listen to themselves. Someday they'll blame you for making them give up great opportunities. I smiled. If those opportunities come with suffocate, then they're not opportunities. They are golden chains. Mom fell silent. Brooke stepped out behind me, holding a sheet of handwritten music, her handwriting still messy, but something about it was raw and real. I'm not going to Juilliard, Mom, she said. I'm staying here, learning the way I want. And if you can't accept that, I'll still move forward. Mom froze. She turned without a word, didn't cry, didn't yell, just shut her car door and drove away as quickly as she'd arrived. That night, I sat on the balcony with my sisters, Madison, researching journalism scholarships, Nora mumbling through a short film script, and Brooke strumming her guitar. Dad was in the back cooking a late dinner for the first time in my life. I saw him relaxed. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe Mom would return with new fury. Maybe there would be more cracks, more battles. But right now, bathed in warm light and honest laughter, I saw clearly. I didn't need a perfect family. I just needed a place I chose to stay and where I was allowed to be real. The news of Grandma Edith's passing came on a cold morning, just as Seattle welcomed its first rain of the season. I was about to leave my apartment for class when the phone rang. It was her lawyer, Mr. Fletcher. Scarlett, I'm very sorry, he said, his voice even but sincere. Mrs. Edith passed away in her sleep last night. She asked me to inform you personally and invite all family members to the office this week for the reading of her will. I sat in silence. I knew her health had been declining, but I still wasn't ready to lose her. She was the first person who had ever seen me, not through a lens of expectation, but with the eyes of someone who truly understood. 3 days later, I walked into the conference room with a heart both heavy and trembling. Mom was already seated by the window, her hair perfectly styled, dressed in a classic blue dress as if she were attending a luncheon. Dad sat quietly in a corner, pensive. Madison, Nora, and Brooke sat beside me, close, unmoving. Mr. Fletcher opened the folder in front of him, his voice low and steady. Mrs. Edith Bennett leaves her entire estate, personal assets, real estate, and investment holdings valued at $2.7 million to Scarlett Winslow, with one condition: the creation of the New Roots Scholarship Fund to support siblings separated by family pressure, gender bias, or parental favoritism. My mother's mouth dropped open. This is outrageous, completely unfair, she said sharply, her tone metallic. She had every right. My father spoke up for the first time in the meeting. And I think she made the right call. The lawyer continued. Additionally, each granddaughter, Madison, Nora, and Brooke, will receive individual trust to pursue education or artistic endeavors with no attached conditions. Brooke squeezed my hand when she heard her name. I felt her small shoulders begin to tremble. Finally, Mr. Fletcher said, Mrs. Edith left a handwritten letter for Brooke. He handed the letter to her. Brooke opened it, her eyes skimming each line. Then suddenly, tears began to stream down her face. She knew. She choked. She knew everything. I pulled her into my arms. Madison stepped forward and gently placed a hand on Brooke's shoulder, while Nora reached for tissues from the box nearby. Oh, she wrote, Brooke said through tears, that I don't have to become anyone but myself, that she knew every note I played was just to please Mom, that she was once a golden child, programmed the same way, and she didn't want that for me. The room fell silent. She said, Brooke continued, that I have the right to hurt, to be vulnerable, and to choose healing instead of pretending to be strong. Mom stood up. You don't need therapy, Brooke. You just need to focus again. Get back on the old path. No, Brooke interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. I don't need you to choose my path anymore. Her words cut like a blade through years of invisible chains. The lawyer continued, the New Roots Scholarship Fund will be managed directly by Scarlett. Mrs. Edith believed she was the only one with the experience and heart to turn pain into meaningful action. I gripped the folder in my hands. The numbers, plans, and clauses, all of it was real, but what tightened my throat was her faith. She'd entrusted her entire legacy to me. The one once labeled the outsider in her own family. When the meeting ended, Mom approached me, her face bitter and trembling. Scarlett, if you think money and titles can replace a mother, I looked her straight in the eye, not with hatred, not with pleading. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just don't want to keep getting hurt by someone who uses love as a weapon. She turned away. I didn't stop her. I turned to my sisters. Madison smiled, Nora nodded, and Brooke, still clutching the letter, whispered, "You know, she didn't leave us an ending. She gave us a chance to start again." I smiled for the first time since she passed. Then let's begin. 1 year after Mrs. Edith's passing, the little house on the hill north of Seattle was no longer a place of retreat. It had become a real home. The kitchen stayed warm, not because the oven ran all day, but because of the laughter that filled every late-night meal. Morning tea was now strong coffee, and the smell of acrylic paint from Nora's art corner wafted through the wooden hallways. Madison was now studying journalism at the University of Washington on a full scholarship from the Edna Catherine Fund. The once quiet girl had become the most powerful voice in every debate. Nora ran a YouTube channel interviewing kids abandoned by their families. It just hit 100,000 subscribers. I was so proud that her profile photo was the first thing I saw every time I opened my laptop. And Brooke, she no longer wore down her fingers with Rachmaninoff etudes. She wrote music. Her ballads were a little clumsy, her melodies not always polished, but they were undeniably hers, honest, skeptical, and deeply real. The piano, once a symbol of pressure, had become her place of healing. Tonight, I came home after an interview with a nonprofit education group. The Edna Catherine Fund was in its second year. 11 sibling pairs, separated by family conflict, had reunited and now attended local public schools together. We didn't call it rescue. We called it rebirth by choice. My father spent more time in the garden lately, since my mother moved out of the city, leaving no forwarding address, no goodbye. It was like a weight had lifted. He quietly mowed the lawn, fixed the roof, and even laughed sometimes. Something I hadn't seen in 2 decades. "Scarlett," he said to me one April afternoon as we replaced a hallway light, "I can't start over with you girls, but maybe I can start now if you'll let me." I looked at him, a gentle smile on my lips. "I never locked the door, Dad. We just needed time to learn how to walk in without hurting each other again." One late spring afternoon, I stood in Edith's favorite lavender garden. Brooke strummed her guitar on the porch, Madison edited articles on her laptop, and Nora, headphones on, fine-tuned her latest video. Life wasn't perfect. We still argued about who left the fridge door open or forgot to turn off the lights, but those arguments were part of a real family, where no one had to suffer in silence. I placed a new brass plaque under the lilac tree. "Edith's Garden, where all wounds are replanted as hope." Brooke walked over, handing me a fresh sheet of music. "For you," she said, sunlight in her eyes. I wrote it about the day I chose freedom and unfolded it. The title, handwritten across the top, read, "Scarlett's Song, Not Perfect, Just Real." I looked at her and nodded. "You've really grown up." "No," she replied, "I've just finally learned how to live, thanks to you." As the sun dipped behind the row of red brick houses, I knew one thing for sure. My life didn't start with pain. It started the day I dared to walk out of the shadows and brought with me the sisters still fighting to find their way. Family isn't where you're born. It's where you're allowed to return, to be forgiven, and to grow together. Scarlett Winslow once called just the help, was now building an empire of chosen love. In the next chapter, I would write with my own 2 hands. Scarlett's story is a powerful reminder that no one is born to live inside someone else's mold. In real life, so many silently sacrifice and are dismissed by their own families. But like Scarlett, everyone has the right to choose to rise, to step out of the shadows, and build a life rooted in their true worth. Not everyone will understand you, but you don't need approval to live authentically. Freedom begins the moment you dare to say, I am enough. What do you think of Scarlett's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and meaningful stories about family and life.